Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Anchor of the Week. My name is Courtney.
And my name is Lucas, and we are from an initiative of Hope and Anchor Community Church in London.
Yes, and each week we'll be discussing different topics relevant to faith and Christianity in today's culture.
We're here to build a space for the church to share their experiences and to challenge one another to living like Jesus.
Yes. Now, we are very excited about today's episode, guys. We're going to jump right in. Not only are we excited because we're talking about politics, which, yes, I know, opens a can of worms, but we're really excited today. But we have an amazing special guest with us. We're so honored to have Micah Orsetti with us, who, again, is our friend, which is really cool that we get to do podcasts with our friends. But she kind of knows what she's talking about when it comes to politics and government. You've been working for 4 years in the U.S. government in the Department of Homeland Security. You also worked briefly for the U.K. government before getting your human rights master's, or your master's in human rights, I believe is the right way to say that.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can kind of work more fully and more completely in the government here in the UK. So welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the first question that we were so excited, and I'm really excited about this.
Me too.
We always say the same thing, but yeah, we are excited. Every topic just gets us on all the energy.
Yes.
But anyways, I guess the first question, I guess I could say is like, what does it feel like? How does it feel to be working on the government, being there as a Christian, or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's important to have Christians in government, but I wouldn't say we're the majority. So that's it. At times it can feel like there's a lot more pressure than there actually is, you know, because it can be like, I'm representing the entire church, you know, as opposed to just being there and bringing God's presence into the place, you know, and I have to check myself and remember that I'm just there to be Jesus where I am and to respond and, you know, consult with his spirit and, just to understand that the universe is not in my hands, you know, just whatever I do it unto his glory and let him have control. So it's, I think more than anything, it kind of helps me to recognize my own inferiority, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? Like just insignificance.
It humbles you.
It humbles me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
That's awesome. And again, Lucas and I are not in government, so we are very excited that you have this insight. But basically, kind of the general overarching topic of today, or the question, I guess you could say, is what is our role as Christians in politics? And that is every level, from, you know, voter to prime minister, you know? So yeah, we're just going to be kind of discussing a few different things aligned with that. And I love what you already said too. It's being Jesus where you are. And I think that is it simplifies things a lot, right? Because a lot of times we think, you know, I can only make a difference if I am said prime minister, you know? But I think that's something that already just struck me in this was wherever we are, we have the possibility to be Jesus, you know, because of the Holy Spirit inside of us and how much that can change things, right?
Yeah. I'm mostly intrigued as well, like why does it feel like the church struggles to believe that they have a place in the government? Like, I feel like there's always that in the back of our head that there's no way we can be there, or that there's no place in there. So I don't know. I wanted to see what's your perspective with that. Like, what's your thought behind that? I guess fear, or I mean, we can talk more about it as we go.
Yeah. No, it's funny because at least where I'm from Virginia in the States, and there's a rule, you know, at dinner, you don't talk about religion or politics, you know, like that's just kind of an understood, don't do it, you know, it's a no-go zone. But at the same time, if we're meant to bring Jesus wherever we go, if politics affects every area of our lives, shouldn't we then be responsible to have deep conversations about religion and politics, and not have to avoid them for fear of treading on toes? Like, we should love each other enough to have deep conversations. And I think that's something we struggle with. And as well, the church has, you know, a very complicated history with politics. I mean, Jesus offended every political entity at the time and the early church as well. Honestly, you know, like they was hardcore. And then Rome took it and the church became the state, you know, for a long time. And then now, at least in the States and sort of in the West, there's like a separate, not all the West, but more or less, we have a separation of church and state. So there's an understanding of like the church shouldn't influence politics. Whereas, I feel like that's quite a big statement, right? Because I feel like, if you're approaching from a moral perspective, if you're approaching like, let's help the poor, for example, that's a biblical mandate that can go with politics,
Right.
Obviously that can be contested in many ways, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, definitely. But I was thinking a bit of it as well, like how sometimes we can feel like or we don't fully react to what the government is doing, not just like, as you were saying, in the dinner table, but as well like we take it as we're completely separate from it, and like we move like around it. And I don't know, I was just thinking as well, like I'm pretty sure that's not completely right.
Yeah.
How we like completely push the government aside, and we kind of think on this mentality of like we have to reach out to people that are outside the government, but not the people in the government. You kind of think it's pretty sad as well.
Yeah, it really is, because we, at least if whatever position I'm in, if it's a position of leadership or of I don't know, getting tea and coffee, whatever it is, support is important. Like we don't move on our own. We're not islands. And I would imagine in a position like prime minister or a member of parliament, you would need support all the more, because the world is constantly at you, judging you, every move, every decision,
You never win.
You really can't win. You can't please everyone, and that's
course.
such a difficult position to be in. And so I feel like one of the ways the church can come in is say, here's unconditional love. Like, yes, we challenge, we hold accountable, but we love. Like everything is in love.
Yeah.
As opposed to the church just kind of stepping back and saying, oh, well, yeah.
What happens, happens.
Judge. Yeah, exactly. Jesus is on the throne. It's like, well, yeah, he is. But he also asks us to be his hands and feet. So then how can we, how can we meet the government where they are and support them and honor them and lead by example in how to kind of come alongside them in, not instruction, but, iron sharpening iron, basically.
Right.
I mean, like, as we can see in this moment, like we're going through this pandemic, and like every government right now is probably not doing the best thing, like in our eyes. And like it would be very important for us to like you were saying, love unconditionally, to the government as well, like the people, and like not, I guess, focus on what the government is not doing, but take, I guess, the ropes, the responsibility, and do that at the extra part,
Yeah, because I think as well, like, what then separates us, from the world, if I can say it like that, as Christians, if we are having that same kind of judgmental tone, I mean, it's very difficult. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, of course.
We've all
no
struggle with judgment, but I think this is a really good reminder of we're not supposed to look like the world, right?
Yeah.
And so just kind of taking that step back and realizing, like, hey, like maybe we do need to come at this from a different perspective. We can have our opinions, we can fight for what we believe in, but at the same time, I think a big theme of today will probably be like, what does unconditional love actually look like in all aspects?
Which who would have thought that this would be in a government topic?
I know.
Yeah.
But it's true. If we have unconditional love for the marginalized, like the being Jesus' hands and feet, we also need to have unconditional love for those that are high in authority, right?
Yeah.
Because Jesus doesn't discriminate with his love, that's what he's asked us to as well. As you said, though, still holding accountable, still, really pushing for the things that we believe, God wants. But it's interesting as well, because you did touch on something a little bit earlier. Kind of like you threw on this phrase, like, but Jesus is still on his throne, so like we won't do anything, And I think, one, yes, he is. Yes and amen.
Amen.
He is forever. He,
will always be.
Yeah, of course.
He is the savior, the sovereign one.
Yeah.
But it is a thing that, especially I think in the Western world, in this culture, that sometimes that's kind of our hands-off thing, because I mean, politics can be scary, right?
Yeah,
Because it is like this vortex of judgment a lot of times. So I feel like there's that extreme, and then you have the opposite extreme of people that almost hinge like too much on politics, that we forget like Jesus is the ultimate authority, and I mean, everything in life can be very polarizing, but I think especially politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is why it's such a touchy topic as well for Christians, you know?
Yeah.
But we know that Jesus is the middle. You know, he is the common ground. He is, you know, the one that is centered.
Yeah.
And so how do we as the church, in our personal lives and our conversations and our outlooks, I guess, you know, try to find that center, you know, where we're not afraid, but we're not consumed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's really good. I mean, like, I think balance is so important, you know, and Jesus talks about being sober-minded, you know,
Yeah.
and it's so easy for us to get carried away on the fear, you know, as
Yeah.
we're scrolling through the 24-hour news cycle, you know. I mean, I'm the first one to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. What are we going to do? What if this plays out? What if it looks like this?
Yeah.
You know, I worry about my friends. I worry about my family. I worry a lot, you know, and then I remember it's not my place to worry. You know, because it is my place to do something. Like, I can't just passively sit back and say, oh, well, shame anyway. You know, like, that's not really my role either.
Right.
But I have to be aware of when I am trying to move in my control, you know,
Wow.
Yeah.
because I think governments go there really fast, you know, because they have so much responsibility that they think, okay, how do we do what's best for an entire nation? We'll put all of these safeguards in place, you know?
Right.
And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Like seatbelts. Seatbelts are great, you know, like they're really important, you know, but you can go too far in many other circumstances, you know? And as an individual, I don't want to look at legislation that's coming out and then become afraid.
Right.
Or become really suspicious of everything that's going on. I want to weigh everything in the balance, find truth, you know, and what's actually going on between the lines. And then say, okay, what can I do? This law is really harsh, but I know these people that are being affected by it, so I can go provide food and clothes, or I can signpost to agencies that can help them. You know, I can find something with my own hands to do to help mitigate the pain or the loss, you know, if that's the case, or, I mean, it depends on the circumstance, but I mean, we can always find something to do to come alongside the government and provide support that they can't.
That's amazing too. Like, just the idea, and I love that you even talked about like scrolling through your phone, because I mean, I get my news through Instagram or BuzzFeed, you know what I mean? And you see something and we react right away. But it's taking that moment to be like, okay, God, like, actually, like, where are you in this? You know, what is my place in this, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, imagine if we all just took a moment before we like reacted, you know? And as you said, we're sober-minded and actually thought like, how different things would be, how different I would be, you know?
Me too.
Just take a moment before you react, you know?
All this conversation just makes me think of like how we like the difference, I guess, different personalities. There's the people that push back, and then the ones that want to control, like we were talking about. And I will see myself more as being the opposite of you. Like, I'm like, okay, I don't agree with them. I just push away, you know, and I don't do anything about it. So it's like, of course, the church has to have, they have to be present on this, you know. God is love and he loves everything. Well, not everything, but
Everyone.
Yeah. And he wants the actual best for everyone. And so, like, what better than the church being present on what the government is doing? Not present on the side of being controlling, but the side of being present. Like, something that was, I think, kind of new for me was that we have been with the church, and I have not done this before, is to be present on like this protest and stuff like that. And that made me think a lot. Is like how I missed so many times before where I could have just been part of a very important decision of the government and being there as a Christian church, you know, for making, like, helping to make the right decision instead of where God stands. And, you know, and of course, I guess the size of the controlling and all that would be like completely judgmental and like demanding from them to do everything instead of being church, you know, and being in the neighborhood and supporting the people that are homeless and like, I don't know, giving, I guess it would be not to see them as the only alternative, as you were talking about. Like, they're not God. God is the one that is on the throne, you know? So, yeah, I guess, I don't know. I just wanted to say that because I feel like it kind of like points out as well, like the different side of us, you know, and how we can like kneeled on the wrong side.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we had the luxury to sit back and not do anything, you know? I mean, it would be a lot more peaceful in some ways, you know, or it would definitely be easier to sit back and say,
They do say ignorance is bliss.
yeah,
So.
exactly, you know, and to be able to sit back. I mean, it does get overwhelming to the point where you feel like, I can't do this, I have to step back, and I can't, you know? And then God reminds, at least in the past, he's reminded me, like, it's not what I called you for, you know, you need to fight, you have to stay in, you know, because that's why we're here, you know, to speak truth where we are and to continue to fight, not in our own strength again, but like in God's compassion, you know, because government is God's compassion on people, you know, it ought to be. Leadership is compassion. Leadership should model God, you know, and obviously we don't always have godly leaders, but like we still have the opportunity to show Christ, you know, and be the church around them. So I think that would be, I don't know, just something along with what you were saying. I think it would be nice to sit back, but we can't really. But that's a privilege in a way to weigh in.
But also, like, there's a bad side to it. It's like if we step back or sit back, whatever, like we don't own like the experience. You know, we don't have the depth of seeing God move in that side. You know, it would be just the government solving everything for us. We will be completely oblivious to what is happening. The decisions are made, which we are already. But
Good point. A lot happens that we don't understand.
It's true.
But then we don't grow as well in the side of like I guess faith or seeing God move in love in the side of government as well, but also like how he can use us as a church without putting the that belief that we have where like government does everything, but God can move outside of it, you know, like move, like God doesn't get limited by what the government can do and says no, but God can move around and more.
Yeah. And governments come and go.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
I mean, we've seen nothing is new under the sun. You know, the Bible talks about that. You know, and it's something I think that at least gives me peace to be able to look at what's going on and say, okay, but it'll pass. You know, so what am I going to do in the meantime? If I can't sit back, how do I go and do something? You know, how can I honor God in the midst of this? You know, and I mean, Jesus definitely engaged with the government of his day. So I don't think I can't do anything less than engage, you know?
And I think it's important too to remember our prophetic voice as Christians as well, or as the church, as the body, you know, and we have this gift, you know, that God gave us to communicate his heart, you know, and like we would be silly, for lack of a better word, you know, to not speak God's heart to the government, through the government. Yeah. You know, and I think it's just reminding ourselves like our place, but not in like this is my place kind of a way, but you know, like, wow, like God has given us like the gift to speak his truth into every sphere of society. Yeah. And that includes the government, you know, and that's nothing, as you said, to like bang on the door and scream at, but that is like a beautiful privilege. And another thing, as we're talking, I'm just reminded like God is moving in our governments and in our politics, whether we see it or not, you know, and to have that understanding of like, there is so much going on that we don't know, don't see, don't understand, but to like, I don't know, just even sitting here talking about this, I'm like, yeah, he is moving. Yeah. You know, even if I never looked at another news article again, you know, like God is still up to something in our governments. Yeah. And just how encouraging that is as well. Because sometimes it seems, I don't want to say hopeless, but you know, like it's easy to kind of get that perspective. Yeah. So to have this kind of conversation to remember, like, wait, no, like he's not, as you said, he's not limited to us, you know, or to he doesn't touch government or he doesn't do this, but like he is moving, you know, and the fact that we get to be the body with that prophetic voice to join him is incredible.
And I think as well, it's important to remember how the church has in the past been able to move in spite of bad government. I think, for example, you know, in England, you know, when slavery was not only legal, but a thriving trade, you know, and that gave Christians the opportunity to stand up and say, you know what, though, we peacefully protest this. Like we stand against this, you know. There were members of parliament, there were petitions, there were demonstrations, there were all kinds of things going on where the church stood up and said, no, this is not okay, you know. And so even when you have bad laws, as every country does and always has, always will, the church can stand up and make a difference and have a say, you know, to change things. God is gracious in providing us opportunities to do so. You know, it's not the end of the day if we have a bad government. It's an opportunity to kind of see how we can move, to change things in spite of that, you know?
Yeah. With understanding.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
And with that, it just makes me think of like, this should pretty much clarify that there's no limit, you know?
Yeah.
And if a person wants to be part of the government and wants to support and be there and be Jesus in that side, it is possible.
Yeah.
We need more people in the government.
Yeah.
But if you can't, you can still do the same. You can still reach out through the outside move, because God has no limit. Yeah. And if he's stirring something in you, it's going to happen either way.
And numbers mean nothing to God. You know, if the parliament is full of Christian MPs, cool. God can still move the same amount if there's one.
Yeah.
You know, if his church is willing to actually be obedient, we get the privilege of taking part in whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so there's a privilege on our part as well to be able to come alongside him. But definitely, it's no limits with God.
Yeah. And one thing I want to ask too, that we're talking about this, is how can we practically pray, not just for our leaders, but also for the Christians in government? Because even if we know that they're there or not, you know, like they are there. You know, there's, as you said, there's at least one, you know, somewhere. So how can we, instead of just doing blanket prayers, as someone that's been a Christian in governments before, how can we kind of do more direct, I guess, kind of to the point prayers, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, definitely for support, because I think it can be a very lonely place at the top, as I say. But I think as well, at least in Parliament, you have an expectation to vote along party lines, you know. If you don't, there are punishments, and, you know, I mean, you can rebel, but it's, you know, like in quotes, air quotes, but of course, you know, it does take courage to do. Yeah. And if you are, you know, voting in your conscience, like we want leaders who are going to vote according to conscience, you know, according to what they think is best for their constituents. So we can pray for that courage, you know, for them to do what they feel is right, no matter the personal cost. For support from their constituents and from fellow MPs, other believers that are around them, you know, if they can pray together or encourage one another somehow to have perspective in the midst of everything, all the late night votes and things like that. Yeah. I think discernment as well is really key, because obviously, I mean, they're writing laws and ending laws and, you know, all these. Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of a big deal.
It is, you know. And I think it's important for them to be able to have a view to the future, you know, okay, like this sounds really good now. How will this affect all these different people? How will this look in 10 years? You know, they need to have some foresight that is to ask quite a lot of people, you know, to have that level.
And it's not that easy for such a large number of people.
Exactly. You know, and everyone's going to miss out at some point, you know, like I don't know if there's any law that works 100% of the time for 100% of people, but how can they do their best, you know? Yeah. And then as well, to that end, more empathy, because I think a lot of times they're understandably coming at a situation from their own experience. But there is, you know, all walks of life in the world, in the UK, and people coming to the UK, you know, and most of them are outside of, you know, maybe the average MP's experience. Like not all of them, they're all from different backgrounds, but, you know, it's not representative of the whole, you know? So the more they can listen to one another and work together, I think unity is another thing. You know, if they have empathy and unity, they can kind of work together towards a common goal and something that they can kind of show more grace to everyone, you know? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's so good to have like prayer points, you know? Specific things.
When you were explaining a little bit, it kind of, especially the first topic you were talking about, like, it kind of sounds a little lonely sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's what I've heard from them really, is that they've said, you know, it's really hard because we have our conscience and we have everyone else, you know, and we have the rules and we have the limitations, and, you know, there's a lot more to look at than, you know, what's my opinion on this? You know, like the stakes are so much higher. And obviously it's so difficult when you have, I mean, right now we're going through Brexit and the pandemic, you know, these are two life all course altering, agendas that just humans are responsible for making decisions on. And that's a very daunting prospect.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very lonely.
Awesome. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up. So, Micah, we're going to invite you to do something that we call closing statements.
Oh, yeah.
Which is basically if you could highlight in a couple sentences, like your main takeaways from today's little talk. Our guest of honor, you can go first.
Okay. If you feel, if you love Jesus, which I'm assuming maybe you do if you're listening to a church podcast. Feel the freedom to be involved. Understand that politics is part of all of our lives, and there is grace to step into it, and there's a responsibility as well to have the hard conversations and to step into the ring, and do what you can where you can. And as well to educate yourself, read books by opinions that are different from people whose opinions are different from yours, have conversations that are tough, start serving in your community, with the homeless or marginalized or, anywhere really, just start serving. Being in politics is service. It's the highest, it's not the highest level, but like it's the most visible level, it's public service, but it is a position of service. So you have to get on your knees and stay on your knees the whole time. So what better time than to start now?
Well, you just slapped me there in the face. Nice. Wow. That's so good.
I think I was, that was really good. And I think you wrapped up almost. But I guess I was, for me, I think it's very important to just know that we do have a place, and there's we all have a responsibility, but also a capability to be able to, or we're capable of still being the light. And that doesn't have to be like you have to be in the government building to be part of, or for God to use you, but you can be doing it outside as well. And I think it's just really good and something that we really struggle. I think it will be something like we have to repeat ourselves and in believing that God can use us, and it's not just on the conversations of every day, but as well like governmental moves as well, and the government is. Like politics is on everything, as you were saying. So it is also our responsibility. The city, God has made us responsible of it. Be the light. That's what we have been called to. So, I think that will be my point. That we can be used, and this is our city. And
and I think for me, I think I already said this earlier. Well, I definitely already said this earlier. But I'm just very excited at the fact that God is, as you said, like on the move, and just kind of having this this different perspective that we get to join him in what he's already doing, and how we kind of talked about how there already is so much judgment when it comes to our governments. And I forget this all the time. I will be the first to say that I judge my government all the time. But how we can walk in the opposite spirit of that, with that unconditional love and that understanding, I might not agree with you, or, you might be trying your best, whatever it is. But I know that my God is on the move in this country, in this nation, within our government. And I guess just having more of that gratitude and that empathy that you were talking about as well. And to kind of understand that I come from my viewpoint and someone else might come from theirs, but that doesn't mean we can't be united. Even if we have totally different worldviews, or, we're both Christians that see things a little bit different, there is still space for unity and to work together. God is so much bigger than what we see, know, and even government is so much bigger than what we see. So just to have God's perspective in that, help me step back, or I love what we said about before you react, take it to God, just real quick, be like, yo, where are you at in this, it's just something so simple, but I think it could save us so much discord and disunity, or divisiveness. So a lot of D words. But so
I don't think I know that word.
I know. But just kind of that general idea of what, we can still be united. We can still work a common goal, even if we don't see exactly eye to eye. Because I also think that is something that we somehow misconstrued, is unless we see everything exactly the same, then we're enemies. But that's so not true. So just to kind of have that bigger perspective and that revelation that God, hey, you are on the move. let's use that prophetic voice as the church to see you and like what you're doing and to join you with that. So yeah. Awesome.
Sounds good. Sounds a good wrap up.
Yeah. Well, I feel very encouraged after this conversation. A little convicted, a little encouraged. I think it's a good mix.
As well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and thank you again, Micah, so much for joining us.
Sure, thank you
you
for having
definitely
so good.
drove this point home. So we're very grateful.
Thanks so much for having me.
Literally anytime you want to come back.
We'll probably have you back.
Cool. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks everyone as well for joining us for this week's episode of The Anchor of the Week.
Yeah, so don't forget to follow us on Spotify, the Apple Podcast, and on YouTube as well.
Yes, and we will see you next week.